So, if you're thinking about this, anybody who comes in between, say, September 1 of 2010 and let's say the end of May in 2011 will have a PTIN that's good for 3 years and will not have taken the exam. The minute the exam is available, it'll switch. All right? And at that point, if you want your PTIN and want to be a registered tax return preparer, you'll need to pass the exam before you can get the PTIN. All right? So there's this group, and I think it'll be a large group, that'll be in under the wire, if you will. They will have 3 years to do the competency testing. Now, we intend to encourage them to do it earlier rather than later. Because we intend to, at some point, start driving messages to taxpayers themselves, consumer-based messages that say, do not go to someone who doesn't have a PTIN. Do not go to someone who is not registered with the IRS to prepare tax returns. Be a consumer and beware. And that's part of where we need to have a conversation about how we structure that communication, how we delineate the brand that you have from the one that we're talking about with registered return preparers, and frankly from CPAs. Because I've had lots of visits from the CPAs who really, really, really don't want us to do any testing. So, what kind of testing might we do? Oh, I was told that we don't want any piece of paper. They said, well, when they pass the exam, will they get something? Of course. We want to give them something that they can frame that says exactly what they are. And then that didn't go over well, and then someone said, are you going to give them a window sticker? And I said, well, we hadn't thought about it, but thanks for the idea. And I said, but don't worry, you can have one too. So whatever the case may be, we envisioned initially 2 forms of exam. And remember that a lot of this is driven by concerns about quality at the lower end of the income spectrum. One of my responsibilities is administering the Earned Income Tax Credit Program. I take part of that money every year and I pay our field agents in SBSE to go out and visit 500 return preparers based on selection criteria that we use that suggest they're doing lots of bad returns. The program isn't that successful because SBSE field agents are not particularly interested in doing this work. It's not part of their core mission. They don't get training on it regularly. They don't get recognized about it. And it's frustrated me for years because my theory is if we can get if we can address the quality problem with return preparers, we can stop doing as many exams. And today, your chances of being audited if you claim the EITC are higher than any other group of people who make over $250,000 a year. So we do 500,000 EITC exams. That's about 36 to 40% of all the audits we do. So we got to find a different way, right? Doesn't make sense. And it's not that it doesn't make sense because there isn't a problem there, but if you think about if you're administering the entire tax code, you kind of want to balance coverage across every income spectrum and every kind of problem, and not have 36% of your exams on one kind of problem. Anyway, so that's sort of underlying how we think about the 2 exams that we'll put together. One, I hate to say call it the basic, but let's call it the basic 1040. That will include the EITC schedule, Schedule EIC. All right? It may include a Schedule C EZ, but that's the stopping point. So it's sort of non-business 1040 returns. The other one will include those things, but we'll look at small business with real Schedule Cs, or ones that are largely complex. The 2 exams will not be additive. All right? So in other words, you don't have to take this one and then take this one. You'll take one or the other. If you choose, ultimately, and remember, this is going to take a while to get into place, if you choose to take this one and then decide, you know, I'm starting to do more business with small business, then maybe you want to take this exam. Or maybe you want to become an EA, depending on what that looks like. Or maybe you want to be a CPA if you're really a glutton for punishment. The idea is that you'll be able to select one of these 2 exams and take them. And that will be something that the IRS will identify and register you as a registered return preparer with the IRS. All right? You'll have 3 years to do that. When you come up for renewal, so suppose that you're one of those early adopters. On September 1, the IRS opens for business, and I should say now, that's our goal. You'll notice there's been no public announcement of the date, and there's a reason for that. We actually expect to sign the contract with the vendor this afternoon. I keep waiting. I would look at my BlackBerry, but it'd be rude to do it in front of you. But I will have a message at some point that says, it's public. And until then, I won't. But the idea is we're going to get the vendor in, and it'll take us a couple weeks to sit down with all of our IT people and say, can we really get this going? If we can, we're going to put out an announcement probably by the end of May that says September 1's the date. And we'll start working with your organization, with lots of other organizations to say, here's what you need to do. You may also get a letter from us in the mail that actually reminds you, even if you have a P10, you still need to do this. So our objective is to get that process in place. So on September 1, from that date, you'll have 3 years. At 3 years from that September 1 date, if you've not completed the exam and passed it, by the way, that will be an important criterion. I used completed. Someone says, I only have to take it. I was like, really? Really? No, you got to pass the exam. You've got to pass it. So, but whatever that may be, you will have to do that or you will not be able to renew your P10. So that'll be one requirement. The second is the continuing education, meaning that the clock will start running, and I think this will be my next slide. Let's see, testing available. So if you think about registration beginning September 1, 3 years from then, which will be somewhere in here, you'll not only have had to complete your exam and passed it, you will have to have completed 15 hours of continuing education annually. All right, 2 of which would have to be ethics training. We're actually working right now to figure out how we're going to do that to ensure that the CE providers are quality providers, that the curricula that are offered are quality curricula, and that the people who are delivering them are actually people who should be delivering rather than sort of reading material, right? So what we hope to have starting, so if you think about this being year 1, this would be May. We actually expect the CE timeline to run from January 1 to December 30th. So we hope to open with CE providers as early as January 1 of 2011. And what we're going to say to folks is, you'll have 3 years to get it. So you don't have to take all 15 in the first year. Everything in the first year has to be 15. But by the end of the 3rd year, you will have had to have completed 45 hours of continuing education. All right? So, pardon?
It was not clear. You said 15 hours every year.
Every year for a total of 45 over 3. But suppose that you only get 7 done in year 1, you'll have to make up the 8 in another year. So by the end, so in other words, if you really are a glutton for punishment and can do 45 all in the last year, we probably will allow that at least initially, because we're not going to be monitoring when you take it. What we're going to be checking is at the end, have you done all the continuing education? I think our goal would be to ensure that you have new tax law every year, right? Wouldn't that sort of make sense from a quality perspective? But we will not be able to monitor that initially. So right now, it will be self-attestation. When you come in to renew, you'll have to tell us what courses you've taken, and we will do spot checks. My long-term vision is to say to the CE providers, we'd like you to do third-party reporting to tell us which P10s have taken which courses, and so we'll have that. You won't have to tell us. Building that system is not cheap. It's not easy. So I can't promise that, but to me that would be a lot easier both for the people who are taking the continuing education and for the IRS. So that's the objective. I think I've covered virtually all of this. There are a lot of things still to be determined. There's the continuing education requirement and the notion that we're going to revamp the sponsorship program. I see we do actually have a representative from the Office of Professional Responsibility sitting in the audience. So I'll call her up later for all the good questions. But she's part of the team that's trying to figure out how do we ensure some quality in CE providers. Right now, we're not sure what the quality is. What we do know is the reporting, in a word, sucks. We don't really know whether or not people have taken the right kinds of courses or whether they're reporting them correctly or not. And it doesn't mean they haven't, it's just the information we have doesn't give us any comfort that it's happened. We need to build a system that allows us to have some comfort people have taken their continuing education.